Okay. I will call the meeting of the Essex Junction City Council to order for Wednesday, August 13th. First item on the agenda is agenda additions and changes. I am going to propose to remove item agenda 6E, which is the discussion of the future committees, because Councilor Serta could not be with us tonight, and I know he wanted to partake in that conversation. So we will have that on the August 27th agenda. Are there any other agenda additions or changes?
Nope.
Okay. All right, so I will make a motion to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, so the next item is public to be heard. So if there's anybody, I'll start with anybody in the room. No, okay. All right, then online, we got Risa.
It is, thank you.
Yeah.
What I want to talk about is under the consent agendas. Is this something that we'll be able to discuss then about Main Street being closed, or do you want me to say my piece now?
You should say your piece now because we are not removing that item from consent, so it'll be approved as part of a larger motion.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Last week with the Mumford and Sons and Noah Kahan, an amazing concert that some of us got to hear, we were constantly being reminded that traffic was going to be really bad. And it was a good reminder because traffic was really bad. Now there's a request for closing Main Street 4 Saturdays in a row with very vague, because they're not yet finalized details. It's 4 Saturdays that go into leaf peeping season and apple picking season and are much longer in, the closing is much longer than the actual events are said to be. With Maple Street Park being around the corner and a little jog, it doesn't make sense to incapacitate the entire city and all the neighboring towns for 4 Saturdays in a row.
Thanks, Teresa. I don't know, Regina, do you or Chris want to talk about that? I mean, I certainly can chime in, but.
Happy to talk about it. I think it's a good concern, Risa. I think the reason why we are going down this path is because the Crescent connector is now open, so there is a pathway around Main Street, which there hasn't been before. And there has been a lot of talk over the years about the potential of closing down Main Street for a variety of different reasons. The thought is that this will be a pilot to test this out, see how it goes, and offer a kind of exciting, fun event for people to be hanging out in a road doing other things than typical car traffic. So that is the hope. And it's in front of the council tonight to decide if they're open to closing that road, and that's the desire.
Thanks, Regina.
Okay, thank you. I still think approving 4 Saturdays in a row during the time that they are. I know that for a long time there has been talk about closing Main Street. I think that it would be a nightmare for all the streets around it. And we discussed this at that great meeting I guess it was last month, when there wasn't an agenda and it was all public to be heard. 4 weeks in a row, and the timing of those 4 weeks is just a real concern for me. So thank you for listening. And also, complete other thing, great, huge, gigantic thank you to Department of Public Works for fixing the Countryside Drive pothole that had been there. and traffic cone for a long time. It was so great. It was like, oh my goodness, the whole road is safe. So thank you to them for that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate the comments. Anybody else online before I shift? Not seeing any hands. So
For public comment? We're good in here.
we're good. Okay. Thank you, Tim. All right, so we're gonna move to 5A, which is the public hearing for the proposed Crescent Connector Corrective Action Plan Ordinance. And I will open the public hearing and hand it over to Chris. Or Regina.
Yeah.
Sure.
So there are no slides for this in the packet because the business item is on page 81 in the memo, so in the packet, so I will just share that. And essentially what this new ordinance is about is ensuring that any future work with under the roadway in the Crescent Connector needs to meet the corrective action plan that is in place along with that Crescent Connector project. So essentially there are contaminated soils under the Crescent Connector roadway. So any excavations in that need to meet the state approved corrective action plan. So that's why this ordinance is in front of the council tonight. I will leave it at that.
Any questions from the public? Give it
Nope,
2
nothing from in the
seconds.
room.
Okay. All right. Well, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Can we get a second?
Second.
Thanks, Elaine. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, we're moving on to business item 6A. We got the PCAB brief, and I see we have Gwendolyn online with us. Welcome.
I think Gwendolyn's on mute.
All right, I'm not,
We got you.
okay, these tech things, and I will apologize because my computer uses screen reading software because I'm blind. So if anything changes or, well, for whatever reason, it might cut in and then say something stupid. So, did Chief Hogue show up?
He is there, yes.
I'm so happy you're here because you may fill in some blanks after I say a few things. So, oh, well, hey, you can't have a better support than that. So, as probably you all know, PCAB has been solely focused on creating the survey, which has been released and we hope is being well received and is getting lots of returns. I want to say that I commend all of us. I am the least knowledgeable about creating surveys, but we've had incredible feedback from all of our members and assistance from Chief Hogue and Alyssa March, and it's been a long process. Lots and lots of editing, lots of wording changes, lots of refocusing on what we want to ask and what we're trying to get in the way of information. And we did it. I can't recall, and Chief, maybe you will, I can't recall how long the circulating. Is it 3 weeks or 3 months?
I don't believe we gave it a determination as to how long to leave it open. We just wanted to leave it open until we had a quote unquote sufficient amount of responses.
Right. Okay. So, if y'all have done your surveys, that's great. If you haven't, please do them. And if you have, please encourage friends, families, anyone, neighbors who live and work in the Essex area to please do the survey. I think one of the things, and this is just a guesstimation on my part, I think that one of the things that's going to come out of this survey is going to give the Police Community Advisory Board more projects, if you will. We'll have more sense of things that we can do to support the connection between the police and the community. We've already talked a little bit about that, such as, evenings where we present educational topics and so on and so forth. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the fact that we, as well as the police and the town and the city, can use this information to further our hopes and dreams. Now, we've had a really wonderful group of people. We had 3 new people come on, and we just lost 2. I'm sad to say. I was trying to figure out which 2, are they city or town folk? I certainly can't remember that, but we definitely need a couple more people to round out the board. We will be having a vote on chair and vice chair. By the way, right now I am the vice chair, so if they kick me off of that, I'll still hang out. I don't know. Is there anything you want to add, Chief?
No, I do want to point out that all the work that the volunteers had done on the survey over it took over a year to do this survey. And there was a lot of iterations and a lot of conversation and a lot of discussion about what should be in it, how the questions should be worded, and various points. And they did a lot of work finally getting to where we could actually issue it. And I was beginning to wonder whether we were going to get there, but we did. And I haven't talked to Alyssa since we've issued it, and I don't think she's had a chance to actually see the number of responses so far, but we're encouraging everybody we can to take it. The whole purpose for this survey was I gave the PCAB a wish that we could create this survey so that way we could go back and we could judge ourselves versus the survey that was created in 2021 and sent out. And we got some responses out of that. I believe we got about 600 responses out of that.
Junction has started screen sharing.
Sorry about that.
No problem. So the idea was that with the survey was to be able to compare where we were then to where we are now, whether we're doing the right things, what's important to the community, and how we're performing as a police department. So appreciate all the work that you did, Gwendolyn, and everybody, but we could use a couple more members. We are short one from the city, and we are short. So when is interested in joining that, please contact the boards respectively as to where you live and let them know you have interest. So,
and I also want to add that we'd like to see, the public come to our meetings once in a while. We've had some public members come to talk about some issues they've had in terms of police and understanding. We wouldn't mind more public doing that. And also to just come and find out who we are and what we do. We've had certain situations presented to us individually, and we go and present them at the meeting. Chief Hope has been very helpful in responding and researching those issues. There was something else I was going to say. Ugh. Oh, I also wanted to say that I didn't do much in the creation of this survey, but I do run meetings pretty well.
Thank you, Gwendolyn. I'm gonna reiterate what the chief said and appreciate your work on the committee and your work on the survey. I took it the other day and Regina was just showing it. The QR code is in our packet for those who are watching online and are looking for it. You can get it in our packet, but I'm sure there's also another place that it's readily available besides our packet. There you go. Other than getting a body to add to your committee, is there anything else that the city council can do to help PCAB?
Just encourage people to do the survey and in your various conversations, if you end up having conversations about police services or concerns, send them to the PCAB. We're an open meeting too.
Yep. Absolutely. Council members, anybody have any questions or comments?
I was just going to say to Gwendolyn that I appreciate her comment about getting the public to attend, because we often struggle with the same thing. So you're not alone in that. Usually you only hear from people on one extreme to the other, and they're not there in between. So you're not alone. It's a real challenge, and so we continue to advertise meetings and push the agendas and make them public and push the information out there, but you can't drag people through the door. So don't want you to feel discouraged by that just because there's a lack of people at your public meeting. Doesn't mean that you're not out there doing good work.
Elaine, Brian?
Can you just talk about where on the website the link to the survey is? Is it in the police department's website under PCAB, or?
I believe it's on the main page for the town.
Oh, okay.
Under community, I think.
Okay. All right, I'll find it.
I've seen it like,
It's on our social media.
yeah, I've seen it a dozen places. It just kind of flows through. Like,
Yep.
I have seen it on the town site. I've seen it on your Facebook. I've seen it on some various other websites. Christina texted it to me the other day.
Yep.
So I have done it. I've forwarded it to everyone. I've shared it. So Gwendolyn, you said there's been a lot of responses that have come in so far from it, or?
We don't know that yet, but I feel like there's one. Yeah.
I know that a sufficient amount is always an arbitrary number, right? But most of the survey results come in within the first week or so.
Right.
So I'm just
Sure, that'll be a topic of discussion at one of our meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't. Unfortunately, I don't have a number right now because Alyssa was busy working on National Night Out, so didn't right after it got put out, and then didn't. Well, of course, she went on vacation right after that, and she'll be back next week. So when she gets back, I'll have numbers on Tuesday night for the PCAB. So
Regina, can we put that link on our website as well?
It's the 5th news item. If you go to news
Okay.
and initiatives, it's the 5th item down at the moment. PCAB Community Survey 2025.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Fabulous.
Anybody else have any questions? Brian's shaking his head. Elaine,
you,
you're all
Gwendolyn.
set? Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Gwendolyn, for coming. Appreciate it.
Do you need me to stay or?
You can certainly stay to the meeting if you would like. Chief Hogue is going to give us an update on the police department next, and then we're going to talk about traffic studies.
I'll stay for that and then.
All righty.
Probably duck out.
Thank you. All
Thank you.
right, Chief, you're up.
well, I'll just give you a quick overview of things that have been going on. So, of course, we're still not at full staff. I wish I was here to say that we were full staff. We are not. We currently have, I believe it is 4 vacancies right now. That's even with adding the 2 people that we just did that are in the police academy right now. We had been down to 3, but then Rick Gary has now retired, so that leaves us with another open spot. Rick Gary was actually in his position actually was living in one of the police officer positions. So our intent with that, with his leaving, is that we'll be filling that with a lieutenant. At some point, not right off, because we need to get some folks back, and also we're expecting some more vacancies to come up here in the fall, at least temporarily, due to maternity or I should say paternity leaves that are coming. So we're expecting some there. So we're not going to be actually making that lieutenant's position probably till January timeframe, somewhere around there. But our intention is to go back and get to where our chain of command was back years ago, where there were 2 lieutenants underneath the chief. And one will be a support services lieutenant, the other one will be an operations lieutenant who will be in charge of patrol, that kind of thing. So, so yeah, we're not quite there yet, but we're getting there. I did want to throw up, if you could throw up some slides. I pulled some quick statistics here the last couple of days as to how we're doing on some of the more prominent crimes here in overall, and then as just with the city. Yeah, there we go. So this is just a comparison overall and this includes the town and the city in there, just year over year. And this is from January 1st just to August 12th, which is when I ran the stats yesterday. So just looking at those real quick, you know, our property crime appears to be trending downwards, other than retail theft and larcenies from vehicles. And this is going to be a overarching theme of this little presentation, is that please encourage your friends and neighbors, lock their vehicles, don't leave valuables in their cars, and please don't leave your keys in the car, because we'll get to that in just a second. But so what we're seeing is overall our property crime has gone down some, but we saw an increase in retail theft over the past 6 to 8 months from last year where we were. And if you want to go to the next slide there. So this is just the city. And you can see retail thefts are also on the rise there this year, but everything else is down. So we have made some strides when it comes to property crime overall. As I'll talk about here in a second, we've implemented another program to try to address some of the retail theft. And honestly, I think some of the numbers that we're going to see with retail thefts being higher is as a result of our officers encouraging more businesses to report when these crimes are happening. Some of the businesses have chosen to either hold off on reporting them for a long time, or not report them at all because they honestly felt like there was nothing that was going to be done to the offender or anything like that. So they would not call us. But we've done a really good job in the last 6 months of encouraging people to report that, so that way we can address it. So that's just that's the property crime numbers that we have. Any questions on that before I move over to the next slide?
I see Amber shaking her head.
Okay.
No questions.
All right, and so this just carries on. And the reason I put up operating without owner's consent and grand larceny specifically is because those are the 2 crimes that are generally charged, either one or the other, when a vehicle is taken by someone who shouldn't be driving it. Either if it can be proven that it's a grand larceny, that is a felony charge, whereas operating without consent is generally a misdemeanor. And those are holding pretty close to where they have been over the last couple of years, unfortunately. The things we've been seeing most with the property crime, other than retail theft, is happening at night, in the middle of the night, where we're seeing people enter vehicles, take the vehicle when they can, and then usually leave it somewhere in the Chittenden County area. And we're not alone in that. You know, Colchester, South Burlington, Williston, all of them have been seeing the same thing over the last 4 or 5 years. I added on there just a few of the more prominent victim crimes or more serious crimes of simple assault, aggravated assault, and domestic assault, just to give an idea of where we're at when it comes to those types of crimes. You know, we live in a city and a town that are predominantly fortunate in that we don't have a lot of violent crime, fortunately. But what we do focus on most of what we do have is a lot of property crime. So, and we're trying to address that by working with the state's attorney's office, creating this new unit that I'll talk about, and also working with the Community Justice Center as well to address some of those things. So,
Brian has a question, Chief.
Yeah.
Hi, Chief. Thanks for taking my question. How many, do you have an idea how many of these operating without consent and grand larceny are of there's a certain late model of, I believe, Kias that are easy to steal versus keys left in cars and unlocked, and versus a more complicated. I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it a car thief theft, even though I know that that's not the correct legal distinction.
I know I can run the numbers to actually figure that out, but if for now, I could give you an anecdotal kind of thing. Like, I know that we've had a couple of the Kias, and I'm going to look over here at Stephen because he's familiar with this as well, Corporal Greg. I know we've had a couple of the Kias that have been taken. I'm not sure if it's this year or within the last couple of years. We always hear about those, but I don't think it's a major amount of these. The greatest amount that we're seeing are keys left in the car or cars left idling, something like that. So,
thank you. I didn't need the exact numbers. The approximate's good. Thank you.
Yep. So, and then if you go to the next slide for me, this is the city numbers that we're seeing. So, we've had quite a pretty good drop of simple assaults so far, which is great. But our numbers for the operating without consent and grand larceny are very, very similar year over year. So, and that leads me to the next point that I'll make. So one of the things that we've seen, and as I said, one of the things that we've tried to do is we tried to create a unit, which is called the Crime Reduction Team within the department. And it's made up of our detective unit and then selected officers from our patrol division who are interested in doing some extra work. And this is basically working on these retail thefts, being a contact for businesses to call and have one person or two people that they can talk to about what's going on with theft, and then doing some special details. We did one a couple of weeks ago where they concentrated on one area of the town and tried to actually catch people in the act of doing retail thefts and that kind of thing. So we're trying to put a special emphasis on being out at night, trying to intervene in some of these crimes where people's cars are being broken into at night, or being entered, I should say, because most of them are unlocked. We rarely see vehicles that are damaged or vandalized for these kinds of things. So that's why we always encourage people to lock their cars. So we're trying to put people out at night, officers out at night, patrolling around, trying to stop some of this, as well as working with the business owners to, give them some crime prevention tips, and try to work with them a little bit more so that way we can have better communication going on amongst us. So hopefully that will make a bit of a difference. And I know that the guys have been active since June when we formed that. So we'll see how that tracks here in the next year. The next point I had was traffic, and we're going to be talking a lot about that in the next few minutes, so I'm not going to really go into that too much. Of course, we worked the Memorial Day Parade, and I know Raisa mentioned this earlier in her comments. So one of the things that we did during that was we used the Crescent connector, and it worked out okay for us. I think we had one truck that was backed up at one time, and once we got them to figure out how to get through there, we were fine with it. So that was kind of a test as to whether that's going to work or not, and it seemed to work fine for us. There were some folks that were sort of confused that they couldn't get closer to the parade, they couldn't come into the five corners and actually stand where the parade goes through this year. So I think as years go by, that people will figure out that yes, you can actually come into the five corners now because it's all shut down. So and we appreciated Ricky Jones and all of his help and all of his truck drivers that really helped us shut that down. We signed an extension this spring for the MOU for dispatching with Williston, so we're going to continue that. That's been working out great for us. And finally, I've got just a couple of updates on one is the Community Justice Center, and we put an emphasis on restorative justice when I became chief, and we really focused on trying to use that as much as possible. During COVID, it was very, very important for us to utilize the Community Justice Center as much as possible because the state's attorney honestly just was not taking cases during that time. Since then, there's been that backup period. And also we really feel, and at least I feel personally, that the Community Justice Center is an appropriate place for a lot of things to go to. if it's going to benefit the community and benefit the person in the end. So having said that, back in January, February time, we reminded the supervisors to be looking at cases that come through, and if it could be diverted from a criminal court case to go to the CJC, that's where it would go. And since then, in fiscal year 25 that ended July 1st, Essex PD had the most cases ever sent to the CJC. And I believe the report that, Regina, I think you got that too, didn't you? The report that CJC sent about a month ago.
Yeah.
I think everybody got it.
Yeah.
We
I think
all
it was
get it,
about-
yeah.
Yeah, I think there was about a 90% closure rate, I think what I saw, that people successfully completed that. So they have been really, really good about letting the officers know what happens to their cases, which is very important for police officers. It's important to know that they're making a difference in how that's being dealt with. And honestly, I think the Community Justice Center, by going through that process, is a lot of times tougher than it would be if you actually went to court. So I can't say enough about them. Finishing that, we know that there's going to be a transition with the Community Justice Center coming up in the next year. And the model that we see now is going to end as of July 1st next year. And they will all be going, or at least all of that work will be going to the Burlington CJC. There are meetings that are coming up here shortly to begin the process as to what that's going to look like. And myself and Jill Evans are going to be on that committee. So hopefully we can guide that process in the best way for the communities. And I'll be honest, one of the concerns that I've had is that we're going to lose our Community Justice Center, and it's going to be now County Justice Center, and you always kind of lose some kind of, connection when you do that, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much what I have. Can I answer any questions for anyone or anything like that? I know it said 10 to 15 minutes, so I don't want to.
Can I want to ask, because you said you sent 2 to the academy this year.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if you can just talk a little bit so that the general public understands that there's a program and then there's more field training that goes into that. And so it'll be a number of time before those officers actually. So I'm wondering if you can just speak about that a little bit, so that there's an understanding.
Absolutely. It is a long process from the time that someone applies to the time they're actually working by themselves as a police officer on the road is generally somewhere between 11 and 16 to 18 months, depending on how long the background checks take. So when somebody applies, they go through an extensive process to get hired. Once they're hired, then they go to the police academy in Pittsburgh. They are down there for, is it 18 weeks now, Steve? 18 weeks. 18 weeks at the academy, and once they graduate there, they're not done yet. They come back, and then they're in a field training program with another more experienced officer for another 4 months. So it takes a long process for them to finally get all of that training. And there are efforts going on constantly, and right now, where it'll extend that time even longer by making the academy longer, because there's always more things and more topics that people want police to be good in. It's gained, I think it was 14 weeks when I went through 25 years ago. So it's gained another 4 weeks in that time, right? So I fully expect it'll be 6 months someday to be certified as a police officer, which is a good thing, and I'm a big proponent of training. So
Thanks, Chief. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I just didn't want people to make the correlation of there's 2 in the academy. Okay, they're done the academy.
No,
They are.
I appreciate the thought. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're not expecting these folks to actually be working by themselves until probably April of next year.
And I also wanted to just, you talk a lot about theft but there's a number of emergency services that you guys are also first responders to. So on top of all of that, you're first on scene with a lot of those emergencies. So I just want to take a minute and acknowledge that is also something that the police department handles and does very well. And from my encounters, are very empathetic and do a great job. So I just want to take a second and appreciate that as well.
I really appreciate that, and I'll just point out, this didn't happen in the city, but just this past week, there was a fire at the Essex Experience, and it happened early in the morning, and it just happened that an officer going home on her way home noticed that there was some suspicious people in the area, called in, and had an on-duty officer respond, and on their way there, they noticed that there's a fire behind that building, and they actually knocked that fire down with fire extinguishers until the fire department could get there. And when I got there, I got there late in the morning. Believe me, nothing that I did helped. But they knocked this fire down, and the fire chief pointed out that the fire was right next to a gas main. So they did a lot of dangerous work and a lot of good work in that case. So yeah, but those are the things we do all the time.
I just want to take a second to acknowledge that as well.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you. Elaine, Brian, anybody have any other questions for the chief?
I asked the chief before the meeting started when the next coffee with a cop is going to be. So
It'll be soon. Alyssa is planning those constantly, and we're trying to do them every 90 days. And unfortunately, the last place that we went to is now closed. So
No.
we'll keep finding places. Yeah.
Brian,
Nope, thank you, Chief.
you're good? Okay. All right, thanks, chief. Appreciate it. Don't go anywhere. All right, next up is the discussion and consideration of the traffic studies and proposed traffic calming policy. And before I turn the floor over to whoever on the city side, I just want to point out that we all acknowledge that there is a current policy, and there are some challenges with that current policy. The intention of tonight is to talk about the future and a proposed policy. So I'd like to kind of keep the focus as much as possible on the proposal that the city and the police department has been working on. So with that, I will hand it over to whoever wants the mic. Don't fight over it.
I'm gonna introduce this, Amber and Brian, so you know, we've got a lot of folks in the room here. We've got Corporal Greg, I always say officer, Corporal Greg, Jeff Kirshner, the city engineer, and Michael, city planner, as well as Chris is here. So,
Ricky as well.
And what was that?
Ricky as well.
Oh, he's online? Oh, didn't see him. I was gonna say, he's a good sport. He'll do whatever we say. So
I guess that's off.
So this topic is tricky. It touches on all different kinds of departments and avenues, and so I really think we've been trying to think through this and come up with something as a starting point to get us going down a good road here. This really is sort of an intro topic for the council. We've got some specific questions for you, but really open to thoughts and questions that you have so that we can go back, really refine this to what we want to do, and go from there. And with this new policy, kind of figure out how do we get from where we are today with the new policy to road improvements that we may make. I also want to caution that we are not going to solve this problem. No matter what we do here and in this policy, people will continue to speed and people will continue to try to get around 5 corners. And but I think we've got a good pathway here to go ahead. So I'm going to hand it over to Chris. Chris has got a presentation that he's going to run through, and then we'll go from there.
All right. So I'm Chris Ewan, Community Development Director, and when my department was tasked with taking a look at the traffic calming policy and putting together a draft, we actually had a student from UVM called Aliyah Leibowitz, who's online right now, take a first jab at learning from some of the peer municipalities and actually interviewing some of the practitioners there, some of the planners and engineers, asking them what works about their policy, what doesn't, what would they change, and what are some of the recommendations. From that, Aliyah put together a very first draft, which then was circulated around city staff. Since then, a lot of changes have been made, but the bones were good. The bones were there, and you know, one of the big things I had to do was just to pare it down a little bit to make this in a format that is that works for the city. Yeah, I have some slides that I'm going to share right now, but I'm not going to be sharing the the policy draft itself. The policy draft is in the packets. There's still a lot of work to be done there, but I think today is a good time to focus on the high-level questions and some of the questions that I will highlight, and also just for staff to answer questions. So the first thing that we have to understand is what the existing policy does. I know we're talking about the future over here and what it can become, but it's also important to understand where we came from, what the limitations are, and also what has been working. The existing traffic calming process has two options basically. One of the items that you can get is these keep kids alive, drive 25 cones, and as a resident you can request them from Public Works, and you can place them on any Class 3 roads. On the slide over here, the orange roads are not Class 3, so you cannot put these cones on any of the orange roads, but everything else is fair game. Besides, actually, you can put it beside the road. The other thing you can do, the other parallel process, is a speed table. And a speed table is basically a speed hump with a flat section at the top. You can see a picture of one of the implementations over here on South Street. This is actually implemented as a raised crosswalk. It's basically the same thing, except this is meant to also function as a crosswalk. So in order to request a speed table with the existing study, with the existing process, residents would request a speed study through the Essex Police Department, and then as resources become available, as Corporal Gregg has the ability to do so with the existing equipment, the speed study is done. If the 85th percentile speed is more than 5 miles an hour above the speed limit, then that location is deemed to qualify. The residents must then collect a petition with 70% of the households on the streets in support. And then if there are funds available, in the upcoming fiscal year, this speed table is then could potentially be put in. The policy also states there is a priority ranking system that is used if there are just too many qualifying requests, too many places that have exceeded the 70% petition threshold, the city can't handle it. Then you use the priority ranking process. This ranking process is a little bit similar to what is being proposed. It takes a look at crash history. It takes a look at the land uses around there, whether there's senior housing, whether there's a school nearby, and it also takes a look at how serious the speeding is over there. This priority ranking system has never actually been used. But it is there. So what are some of the first things that this proposed policy aims to achieve? Well, the first thing is just expanded options beyond the you drive 25 cones and speed tables, which, by the way, speed tables are known to be very effective at slowing down cars, and they just have other, they also impact how you can use the road sometimes and how fast you can go. I mean, kind of by design. But yeah, all options from pure municipalities, states, and national guidance would now be on the table. There's plenty of work that has been done, even just within Chittenden County. The city of Burlington in 2020 spent a lot of money and actually hired a consultant to work with them to create a traffic calming policy, a traffic calming manual that we actually do a lot of pulling from for this draft policy. So these expanded options, what are some of them? I mean, there's kind of, it's not limited to what's shown here, but these are some of the common things, and these pictures are actually from the Burlington guidebook. You can kind of split them into several categories. Vertical deflections are things that make you go up and down. They are most commonly a speed table, a raised crosswalk. There's raised intersections. You raise the entire intersection and there's speed humps which are more usually in the middle of the block, and they're just a little bit smaller. They're all possible in Vermont, even with our snowy climates, if you build them to be a plowable profile. The other category is horizontal deflections, things that make you kind of go around sideways, or interventions that narrow the road. So things like a mini roundabout. That's that's a kind of big thing that's a big change to make to a road, but it's shown to be pretty effective at slowing down vehicles. Median islands, what's called a choker, just a narrowing of a road in the kind of in the middle of it. Curve extensions, which is focusing at the intersections, making sure they aren't wider than they need to be, because you're not supposed to park right up to the intersections anyway. And chicanes. Chicanes are kind of changes to the curb to create little side-to-side movements, jogs in the road, so that you cannot go as fast. And then lastly, there's another category, just kind of perceptual or passive measures. Gateway signing, we have some of this, like just signage or some kind of visual treatment to show you're entering the city. It is time to respect this as a local community. People live here, don't go so fast. Pavement word markings, that's common in in transition zones from highways to local roads. And radar speed feedback signs, I believe we have one of those here, I think. And transverse rumble strips, you've probably seen these on our highways in Vermont, where it makes a sound when you drive over. Technically, none of these force you to slow down, but the research shows that they have some impact. One of the things that this policy suggests is to take a look at some of these guiding documents and use them as use this guidance as a starting place. So, for example, from the city of Burlington, there's a summary table that breaks down which types of interventions are for them more desirable. What needs engineering judgment? I mean, everything needs engineering judgment, but like what sometimes might work and sometimes might not, and then what's just not recommended. And it really takes into consideration the context of the road, whether this is a local road, and in our case, a local or minor collector streets, whether it's a major arterial like Pearl Street or Park Street. What you can do there is probably quite different. You wouldn't want to be putting like a speed hump on Pearl Street if just with the traffic volumes and the kind of traffic that goes through there. But there are a lot of other things that it does recommend as possible. This is from the VTrans Speed Countermeasures Toolbook. This was something that they had done. They had created just a few years ago and published, and they're really pushing for Vermont municipalities to take a look at this and consider what some of these learnings are. Talks a little bit about the frequency of how common some of these treatments are, whether it's kind of plow friendly, snow and ice control, like if it's advantageous for that or if it's not favorable. Emergency response, cost and maintenance, and it also breaks down speed reduction potential. I think that's something that's quite important to consider in all of these different treatments. There's different levels of effectiveness, different levels of expected outcomes. If you're trying to slow traffic down a lot, I mean, you might be looking at a different solution than a place where you want everyone to slow down just a little bit. Another piece that we're proposing to take a look at is to potentially replace the neighborhood petition system. And this is really to reduce the barrier to implementation. We know that since the existing traffic calming policy was created, there have been 3 implementations of speed tables, and one of them has been taken out. At least that's from the recollection of everybody that's I've been working with on this draft. Yet we also know there are a lot more requests and a lot more and a lot of those. Well, I mean, I don't know. I think we have some stats here, but quite a few of those requests do meet the threshold and there's a recommended action, but somehow it's not making it to the finish line. And we think the neighborhood petition system might be one of the reasons behind it. And maybe it's for good reason, maybe it's not, but it's certainly something to consider. I think to require a 70% kind of a super majority of support is a pretty high barrier, and it might be a particularly high barrier to neighborhoods with certain demographics or with multifamily residences where it might just be a little bit harder to have that neighborhood interaction. There's this change from the neighborhood petition system also comes with a bigger focus on a scoring criteria, and a scoring system that is proposed would be applied right from the start. When you get when we get a request, we would start to try to figure out if that's an area to focus on, if we're trying to focus on the highest impact locations. And then the public process kind of comes in afterwards, where there would be a public meeting to discuss the existing conditions. Right now, we're thinking the Bike Walk Advisory Committee is one committee that is very much focused on pedestrian safety and the conditions for cyclists as well. But there's some consideration as to whether or not the Bike Walk Advisory Committee is the place to put it. But this is where this draft policy says to host these meetings. And after there's a recommendation coming from staff, there would be a public meeting to discuss these recommended solutions. Also through the Bike Walk Advisory Committee, but with hopefully with public notice. We've got to figure out a way to make sure that all the interested parties have a good chance to voice their opinions and to have their input. So I put in these slides some highlighted lines, and these are actually some of the things that will come back at the end. I have the last slide with a summary of all these questions, and these are the questions that I think the City Council really needs to weigh in on soon. About public engagement, should the neighborhood petition system be replaced? I mean, that's the first question. And if so, is committee level review valuable to this process? And should the bike walk, should it be under the Bike Walk Advisory Committee? I can tell you the Bike Walk Advisory Committee is has the capacity, whereas some of the other committees, the planning, I think the planning commission would be also interested, but they have plenty of work on their plates already. So responsible departments, with the existing policy, I think the requests go to the police, and then after the speed studies are done, it's kind of passed to the city manager. But in terms of what happens beyond that, I think there's a little bit of uncertainty, and that's maybe, with the transition to becoming a city and everything, I think maybe that's where some of the cases have gotten stuck in the past years. With this proposed policy, we propose that the community development department kind of takes a lead and becomes the clearinghouse of the data and requests and just keeping track of what's coming in. But with close collaboration with the city engineer, with the police departments, and also with the public works. The goals of this policy, we're not proposing any major changes. I think we're just kind of clarifying really the existing goals, both existing and the proposed policies focus on speed reduction for the purposes of safety. I know that a lot of the complaints that are received have to do with quality of life as well, about noise. I think as it's written right now, the quality of life benefits are ancillary, but they probably there are benefits as well. I would say that this is not exactly the case with all the other pure municipalities we've looked at. Some of them do have a broader set of goals that include things like that are more focused on quality of life. But at the same time, I don't think at this point it probably doesn't need to be changed in Essex Junction. There's plenty of safety work to be done, and to focus on that first is probably the right thing to do. Speed threshold, not much of a change here. The existing policy says if the 85th percentile speed is more than 5 miles an hour over the limits, then that location qualifies. The proposed policy keeps the same threshold, but the scoring and the priority scoring increases with the severity of speeding. It sort of did before, but because the categorization was done a little bit differently before, and it was also that the scoring system wasn't actually used all that often before. So I'll note that not all municipalities, actually all the municipalities we spoke to, don't have the same system. The 85th percentile speed could be 1 mile an hour over the speed limit in some of these other municipalities. And if it scores well because of other factors, because it's a high impact location, they would consider a traffic calming policy. Not saying that we need to, change that right now, because as I alluded to before, there's plenty of work to be done on streets where there is some serious speeding going on. But one day that's something that's, I believe, can be addressed as well. Pilot projects. This proposed policy allows for pilot projects, which obviously come at a lower initial cost but higher operational costs. And this, pilot projects are also a great opportunity to see how things work, see how the neighborhood reacts, see if it's actually meeting these stated goals. The three photographs I have on this slide. The top left, this rubber speed hump is actually something that the city of Burlington is doing a lot more of this year. They figure for a tenth of the price, they could put these in for the summer, take them out before the winter, and be more reactive to neighborhood requests, and then they could consider making them permanent, if they work and as funding becomes available. So that is something that's can be thought of. The top right corner, this is a picture of Lincoln Terrace. This was a traffic calming policy done kind of before. This was a traffic calming project that was done more because of a visibility issue. It came up about a year ago from some neighborhood requests for children accessing the school and not being visible to the drivers approaching from the east side. We proposed some changes, and we knew that if it was implemented with paint and posts, it could be done a lot quicker, and we could see if it works. If it doesn't work, no problem. If it works, maybe one day this could be made permanent with proper curbs. And then at the bottom, this is a picture from Burlington. This is a program, a quick build program they had adopted in I think 2018 or so. Loomis Street. This is the Old North End Greenway. This is an example of a chicane that uses temporary materials. They built it for relatively cheap and very quickly. It lasted for as of a few months ago it looked like this, but right now they're actually pouring the curbs and making that permanent. They got some state funding to make these permanent going forward. So yeah, one of the questions is should pilot projects be preferred? If there's a chance to, if we could put in an actual asphalt speed hump, or we could choose to just put in these temporary rubber speed bumps and be able to do several times more of those. Should we be leaning towards that instead before making them permanent? And I think related to that is a consideration of costs. I took a look at the Burlington's traffic calming manual, and also some other resources to see how much some of these interventions tend to cost. A speed table ranges between 2,500 and 8,000 according to the Burlington manual. Jeff Kirshner would say that a lot of these things are context specific, and that is entirely true. Whenever you mess with the road, if it's going to change the drainage patterns, and if you ever have to make additional changes to because of that, the costs can go way up. And for that reason, a raised crosswalk, even though it's kind of similar to a speed table, costs more because you can't leave a gap at the end near the curbs for water to flow. You got to actually redo drainage sometimes. Curb extensions, or any time you mess with the curbs for a short section of the road. So whether it's a curb extension or you're talking about a median island, a small median island, you're looking at the range of $10,000 to $25,000 for one of them. Raised intersections, 2,500 to 70,000. I mean, 25,000 to 70,000, and the radar speed feedback signs 4,000 to 7,000 ish. Some of these measures need to be installed in sets to be effective, especially when you're talking about the horizontal deflection features. A chicane obviously needs more than one thing for it to be a true jog in the road. So that it tends to cost a little more in total. If we take a look at some full projects that have been done around across the region, the Old North End Greenway that I showed a picture of, the Loomis Avenue picture, that was about $150,000, partially through a state grant. East Avenue is something that's one of the bigger roads that I think a lot of people probably have driven through. It was a particularly expensive project because there had to be there were a lot of drainage implications, and it was just a high traffic road that needed a lot of traffic control and changing of the pavements around there to make construction work. Their public works departments gave me some numbers for two projects that might be closer to the scale of what Essex Junction might be looking at one day. On Ethan Allen Parkway, $129,000. That's like the bid price. That's one curb extension, 4 speed tables, 1 raised crosswalk, and 1 of the flashing beacons. Archibald Street is $95,000. 3 curb extensions, 2 speed tables. That's how much it would work out to. If you're talking about temporary installations, rubber speed hump can be much cheaper. $1,000 to $2,000. It can be actually cheaper than that sometimes. Planters, concrete planters, plastic planters, $1,000 to $2,000. We have some of those actually, in the city that might potentially be able to be repurposed. They do have some of these temporary installations are very hard to work around from a public works perspective in the winter. So actually in Burlington, some of them are taken out for the winter and put back in the spring. Delineation posts, those kind of flexi posts, very cheap, $200 to $400 for like 10 of them. So in general, you need multiple of these things to make a project work. But I think from my guess, and my guess is that a pilot's traffic calming project can often be done with under $10,000. Now that doesn't include the cost of staff time to really figure this out, or even engineering review. That's some of that we already budget for separately. But yeah, one of the questions that comes out of this is should the city dedicate additional funds for traffic calming? We have with the existing policy, there's a way to implement traffic calming within existing line items in the annual budgets, but there's nothing quite dedicated to only traffic calming, and it's kind of competing with other uses. So these are a summary of all the questions for City Council to consider right now. Overall, is this the direction that the City Council wants to go in? And if so, should the neighborhood petition system be replaced? Is committee level review valuable? Is the bike walk advisory committee the right place? should we be preferring pilot projects? And should the city dedicate additional funds towards traffic calming? That's all the slides I have.
Thanks, Chris. Brian had his hand up to ask some questions. I just wanted to let you finish your presentation. So Brian, I will call on you to ask your questions now.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Chris. I really love where you're going with this. Thanks, man. Couple of things. Number one, and this is a constituent question. I noticed that speed dips were not included in either the AOT or the Burlington manuals. Do you know why that might be?
I don't know, but Jeff Kirshner is sitting right there. He's a city engineer.
Fair enough. I thought it might be like a question for Jeff. So and.
I'm not 100% sure, other than I do think drainage comes into play there. Ice, you know, we have accumulated water in those, and then ice comes and forms in there. We've had them. I know when I was in school, and I know you were there, we had those all over the high school. And now I actually think they're raised. They're bumps now instead of dips. I think they do the same thing. Dips are louder, in my opinion, when you go over them. But I'm not 100% sure why they're not included in either of those references that you did.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was over time they learned that things were more effective. So fair enough. Fair enough. Great, thank you. Chris, you said that we haven't been using in the past the scoring system. I got the impression from your answer, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that was because we're not getting more requests than we have the bandwidth to perform. Is that an accurate impression?
All of this, started before my time here and Regina's time here, so we don't really have the full history of why things have been the way they are. But we know that there have been cases where the speed studies have been completed, and the residents who initially brought it up has been told about the petitioning process, and then we never heard back. So that the petitioning process is probably one barrier to it, but to implementation. But and as a result, we haven't had competing projects ready to go at the same time. That's going to be my guess. But Regina, do you have any thoughts on why it has never actually, been used?
That's my guess as well. And there's other people here in the room and Ricky who probably have a little bit more history to it. But you don't really get to that part of the current policy until somebody submits a petition. So I think there's, over the last 3 years, as Chris alluded to before, as we've been getting the city up on its feet, there's just been a lot of trying to figure out where these things are. So I don't know, but prior to that, I don't know, and it sounds like we just never really got to that process. But if anybody else has any other insight into that.
That sounds about right to me. Ricky's been here a lot longer than I have, though, so.
Ricky's on.
Yes. Yeah, no, we haven't had that many, really. There's no competing ones. We've had a bunch of onesie twosies here and there, but nothing that was really competing against each other. So that's the reason you'll see that.
Fair enough. Thank you, guys. Yeah, I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Elaine, Tim.
Yeah, just a quick question. If the petition process were removed, which was 70% of the people on the street, and it were shifted to, let's say, the bike walk committee, and it would be like a public conversation with the committee, would it still mean that just perhaps one resident on a street could request the investigation for whether or not you need a speed study, and then would it proceed to the committee? And then if a decision were made to put in a speed bump, for example, what other opportunities would other residents on the street have? Because I'm wondering, like, would that lead to one person on the street having the ability to get a speed bump put in without consulting with anybody else on the street? I want
think-
to make sure that we're not like removing a process that maybe just you only need 40% of the residents or 30% of the residents.
I think that's a that's a really good point too. There's a reason why the 70% threshold was put in, is to make sure that there is community buy-in and support. From our research and talking to other municipalities, we haven't seen a pure municipality that does a similar process with the petition. I think there are other ways to make sure that we hear from the people that we need to hear from. Part of it is public notice, making sure if we need to mail people, we could do that. If we need to put up signs at the location that's being considered, that could be done. And finally, if we're leaning more into pilot projects, in theory, you could just, it might matter a little bit less until it's actually put in, because like then you can, see what people,
Get people's attention
you'll get
that
people's
way.
attention once something is actually done, and as long as it's not too hard to undo and too expensive, that is one way, one alternative way of making sure there's the public feedback. Yeah.
I think the capital committee does a really good job of having their scoring rubric that also includes, like, if we're looking for something for, a similar type of thing to use, there is a public participation line item, which you get, I can't remember off the top of your head, but off the top of my head, but like, if you have the entire street come out and say, hey, we want this, you're going to get 20 points for it. That rarely ever happens, but it has happened. And if, you get one person, then you're going to score like 10. So there is some history within the city of using this scoring rubric and allotting scores related to public participation and folks who are coming out to ask for these things. Sorry, Regina, to cut you off.
Thinking through this definitely brought this question up. I mean, because it is, the other thing we have to try and figure out too, once we know if this is the right direction, is how many of these things we can actually do. And so I don't want to overpromise how many roads we can actually alter in the future right now. But we've only seen 3 so far. And I think part of that is that petition process. The concept here, I think, is just as it is today, one person can call and say, I want a speed study. So that's sort of still the same, but we've got a process to figure out whether it even makes sense to take that step. Then if we take that step and it shows through the speed study plus a number of other criteria, which some of those are already factored in. You can see them in Corporal Gregg's memo, that he's already considering some of those other things like crash history and that sort of stuff. If we have just a process that is scored in such a way to take those considerations in, we're kind of elevating it and saying, does the city think through this policy that we put into place that something should be done in the street? As opposed to, do the residents going to like this or not like this? And there's pros and cons of both pathways for that.
Brian?
Yeah, both Elaine's question reminded me of another question. I love the public participation. I do think the 70% is too high, that that's the bottleneck. I was wondering if the new policy would have the ability that just with literally no public feedback, but just professional feedback from, say, the engineer. Or I know Corporal Gregg was great when I went on a ride along with him, and he was saying there are places where we don't get complaints, but I know are dangerous, right? This kind of professional feedback to where we need some traffic calming is super valuable as well. And I'm wondering if we're and I ask that we can please include some of that kind of professional feedback in the new policy going forward too.
Policy already, that's this scoring system is meant to be a guideline, a starting place when you're looking at prioritizing which locations to invest in first. It doesn't say you have to start with the highest scoring one. And a lot of it is still very much up to professional judgment and discussion among staff. And I think it's there's a lot of expertise in this room that can help towards good decisions.
Yeah, exactly. It is. I worry that even requiring a citizen request first might be a bottleneck towards hitting the most dangerous areas first. Am I making sense?
That could be adjusted to just say anyone, including staff, could put a request in.
Yeah, I would definitely support that, is having some type of mechanism in there where if we identify, or if Public Works identifies, or somebody identifies a roadway that's not getting a lot of complaints from citizens, but things could still be studied and then taken care of ahead of time before we do have, because ultimately our concern is reducing crashes. So, if we're seeing crashes on a certain road, are there things that we could put into this policy to try to change that? So,
an example of that, not letting a citizen complaint necessarily get in my way of starting that process. Park Street and Maple Street are some of the things that have been studied, data's been collected on, are included in some of the stuff that should be in your packet, and were really generated solely by me. We have passing comments about these roads, no official complaints that made it to my voicemail or email or to the city office. So some of that input is, I don't know if it's formally laid out within the target of the policy, but I'm certainly not letting that necessarily get in our way of collecting the data and at least exploring those options.
If I can, Steve, excuse me, Corporal Gag, old habit. Can you talk a little bit about the speed data collection? These are, I'm gonna call them JDAMs, but I know that's not right. JDARs, if that's still not right. But this box that attaches to the telephone pole and what it measures and how it measures and what goes into it, because I feel like if we're doing a speed study, are we looking at speed limits? Because basically the entirety of the village or city almost is posted at 25. There are certainly roads within our jurisdiction where 25 is darn near impossible. There are roads that are too wide. There are roads that transition from 25 to 40 or 40 to 25. There are roads that are 25 and come right out here. There are roads out here where it is 25, but it is a straight shot. And so I'm wondering if that information is taken into account and is part of, hey, we're above the 85th percentile, but the 85th percentile isn't a realistic percentile for the speed limit just because it's a blanketed 25. So maybe there needs to be an adjustment to the speed limit in particular areas. And as someone who has friends in countryside, I know Brickyard is always a hot one. That road, I have to set my cruise control on. Same thing headed out of town on Park Street. And if you get past South Street, Cascade, you're going down the hill, it's 25 till you hit the middle of that bridge. Nope. And then, so I'm hopeful that maybe there's some feedback to there that says a blanketed 25 mile an hour doesn't work. And I'm not saying there is, but I think it should be an option that's on the table as we look at things. The other thing I haven't seen mentioned in here, and excuse me because this was a lot of reading, was any sort of emergency service consideration for speed tables, build out, speed humps. Sure, Burlington does a lot of build outs, but they spend a lot of money to repair their apparatus as they hit their concrete pots. So if, whatever we do to build that out, and the all roads treated equally thing, speed study requirement, all roads are eligible, and that's great. But I think the class 2 roads, when it comes to any sort of traffic calming, needs to have a completely different consideration than the class 3s. So I think that needs to be important. I would also like to publicly apologize to the residents of Pleasant Street who had their road redesigned and their speed table taken out. And when they came back for a speed table, they were told that they were ineffective traffic calming devices and would not be reinstalled. So we've come full circle on that. And so I'll take a minute to publicly say to them, here we are. Sorry about that. And now you have a painted yellow line, which means that your road is entirely no parking both sides the entire length. And I think those are my comments.
So I think you had some questions in there.
Okay.
And I took some notes. I'm gonna try and answer a few of them as we go.
Okay.
Keep me straight if I lose track. I think you kind of started with a question: what is the magic black box, right? So there's a few different technologies and pieces of equipment that I use to do this kind of initial speed study and speed data collection. And there's a variety of ways that this information is ultimately collected, either by the police department or in a more formal engineering sense. I do not have the labor and ability to sit on a street and manually count cars, which can be done in a more formal engineering capacity. The device that we find that is most effective currently is a JAMR. It's a little black Pelican box, basically, with a radar device unit in it. Has some limitations in the fact that there's some manufacturer specifications of where and how it can be deployed around parked cars and temperature ranges and things like that. But it's a fantastic device because it does really three things. It can measure traffic in both directions simultaneously in the same segment of road. It can count the cars, measure their speed, and determine a length of the vehicle, which I often use to get some understanding of the types of vehicles that are using these particular roadways, whether it's a commercial motor vehicle or typical passenger cars or maybe some other form of commercial traffic. That gives, in conjunction with its software that it comes with, gives us a lot of the raw data that you're seeing and I'm referencing in the memos that I've provided to the city for this initial data collection. Does some of the calculations and gives us an understanding of how that road is being used. As far as looking at the speed limits, which I think is was your next big question. In short, yes, I consider it. However, my job as a police officer is to work within the confines that are established by the citizens and their representatives of the council. So the ordinance is present. That's the established speed limit, and that's the frame I need to work with. I am aware of various guidance in the MUTCD, the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, which is I got it right? That U.S. Department of Transportation publishes. There's also supplemental documentation from state AOT that reference how these numbers in 85th percentiles should be used to understand road design and reflect on the movements of free-flowing traffic and the average user. And using that to help establish the appropriate speed limit. One of the things I've talked throughout the development of this draft for you folks, and I continue to be a believer in, is this is a great tool to establish community expectations. I often, out in the town, they don't have a formalized traffic calming policy, and it's difficult to navigate some of the community complaints. This gives an excellent roadmap. The existing policy and this draft help everybody kind of understand the process to move forward, what they can expect, and how they can navigate addressing those problems, which is an essential tool, and I applaud the city for having that and looking to continue to sustain that. Part of those community expectations comes with common accepted use. What is the average citizen doing on these roadways that they expect is acceptable? We have the great privilege in Vermont and the United States to adjust our laws to our current expectations as people. Are you looking at the spider that's between us? Yeah.
I was checking to see if maybe I had a floater in my EDMS.
It's not just you. But we have the opportunity to make these adjustments from a variety of different inputs. And I think part of how people are currently using the road, if there's no noticeable trend over a period of time where speed continually increases with no other changes on the roadway, it's an indicator that that's how the community potentially expects to use that roadway. And the guidance from the state does say we should avoid posting blanket speed limits across municipalities, and we should avoid lowering speed limits under public pressure, and that the law also talks about not posting speed limits that are artificially low. So while it is something that is certainly considered out there, it's frankly not the police department's position.
And I just wondered if if that data is also collected, and that's not to say that it's your job per se, but to make sure that that information gets to the city engineer's office and is something that can be evaluated.
Yeah, Jeff and his staff and Superintendent of Public Works, Ricky, is certainly very aware of these guidance. They often help me understand some of the stuff that's out there as well. As for some of the specific places you brought up, Brickyard, Maple Street, Park Street, I'll kind of break those into two different groups to better fit kind of your last question, I think. Brickyard is kind of separate from Maple Street and Park Street in its classification of road and how it's used, but it is certainly a unique scenario. There's a lot of existing structure to keep pedestrians have adequate access and safety, and the road design is certainly anecdotally indicative of a higher speed, what would normally be a higher speed limit. And I think some of that shows through some of the data a little bit. But there is a situation that something different can probably be done than these high capacity state highways that are coming through our community and our large volume roadways. I think some of the data, rough numbers on Maple Street, Park Street that I recently collected is we have hundreds of thousands of cars, close to 200,000 cars a week, vehicles a week coming through those arteries. Some changes to that may not be as palatable to state commerce or the users as it would be on Brickyard. But there's also an extremely high volume of traffic. Density and volume always contribute to different problems. And that's shown in some of the rough collision data provided in those memos, where there's no appreciable crashes on Brickyard. There's no pedestrian injuries. There's no fatalities in the records that I was able to examine. Whereas Maple Street, we have plenty of crashes. Park Street, we have not only some of the highest volume of crashes in the city occur on Park Street, but we in the last 2 years, or 5 years maybe?
Last 3 years.
We've had 2 pedestrian fatalities on Park Street. There are significant underlying factors in those pedestrian fatalities beyond speed and in some version roadway design. However, there's still important data points to consider. We're talking about pedestrians and fatalities after all. So I think the consideration of the use of the road, access to emergency vehicles are obviously using those major arteries, the impact on those emergency vehicles as we're using those, their impact on delay of access, and the general use type and classification of those roads is certainly something that, again, I might be conscious of it impacts how and where I deploy this data collection equipment. But ultimately, those things, in my personal belief, are beyond the police department. As far as we're provided the environment to work within, and we have those
I
laws to
was
uphold.
really whether the data was collected and could be shared kind of thing, you know. And then, so I'll ask you just one more question, because it's mentioned in here, these radar speed feedback signs. There's a number of them. I do appreciate the one on Lincoln Street as it come in, that reminds you it's 25 through there. There was one on West Street for a number of years, and of course South Summit Street, and there's been some up your neck of the woods. So they're definitely around. They are just that, right? There's no collection high-low. I can tell you from personal experience, the one on West Street turns off at 47 miles an hour. It's under emergency system. I will say that under emergency operation, but it's those. They don't collect. They're just essentially just a flashing reminder, right? There's no.
So we have a number of those signs. They operate. A few of them operate differently. Some of those signs, I have a few that look just like their counterparts that do have cell cards, and I am able to collect data remotely in a variety of different conditions. Even when those signs are not displaying speed, the signs that I have with data cards in them are actively collecting information on speed and traffic counts, but solely in that direction that it's facing, even if it's not displaying speed. So if you see the sign turn off at 47 miles an hour, it's continuing to monitor the behavior of that vehicle beyond that speed. We set those in a particular manner to not encourage speeding. We do design them so the displays turn off, so we're not encouraging motorists to speed past them. But they can still collect some data. I've noticed that moving them helps, but static placements have very short-term impact. In fact, the signs here on Maple Street that have been active for a long time were active during the data collection of this period, and it seems they've had no impact.
Yeah,
those used to be our primary method for collecting data, but they were so cumbersome because we'd have to rely on Public Works to move them for us. That's why we went with the JMRs.
And then, just on a side note, as we are in August, which means, believe it or not, budget season's around the corner. If we're talking about, because you're limited now with these JMRs to what we have. If they're in, I believe somewhere it said that if there was more equipment, there could be more data, and I would love to entertain a price just so we have that information. So as we plan for the next fiscal year, and as well as if it makes sense to upgrade these radar signs, if that's just a blanket kind of thing, so that we can take that into consideration as we move forward into the next budget cycle. And then I will say that there was the traffic study, Jeff, on South Summit Street last year before. Those nice kids were sitting out there in the lawn chairs on the corner counting cars, and I really believe that one of the suggestions that came out of that was to paint the speed limit on the road, and that was a number of years ago, and that hasn't happened. We just want to take a minute to appreciate that did in fact come out, but never moved forward.
And I can say that some of the counting in the cars there, while it was related to a speed complaint, I think initially, that turned into hey, we want stop signs at all those intersections on South Summit. And we know from the MUTCD that we're not allowed to put that. What we did do is we can look at intersections and determine if stop signs are warranted, or whether it's a two-way stop sign or all-way, stop all four. And that's what we were doing at that point, is we were counting cars, the volumes of cars turning, so that we could follow the MUTCD guidelines to see if all-way stop signs were warranted. Not for speed, but because of all the other guidelines, which take into account speed and volume and sight distance and traffic. There's a whole bunch of guidelines that have to go in order before you can just bang up always stop signs. And in that case, it didn't warrant that. It did not warrant all way. We still had some speed data that suggested an elevated speed. That's why we suggested the painting on the road at that point.
My last comment, and I'm just going to spitball here, is with Iroquois being redone, maybe it would warrant a stop sign there at that intersection. And that's all I have.
Okay, Brian has his hand up, so Brian.
Yeah, hi. I wanted to separate my questions between engineering and measurement. So now that Corporal Greg has told us some about measurement, I'd love to ask him some more questions if that's all right. We have 3 of these jammer devices or 2? It looks like I think it's 2, right?
Yeah, so tackle your question and Councilor Miller's at the same time. We currently have 2 JMR units. One was purchased some grant money year or so ago to try and increase our capacity, and the other had been purchased by the police department. The unit I have is more designed for helping guide speeding enforcement and understanding times and directing those times and volumes and how we do enforcement. But obviously additional equipment could increase that capacity of where we can place them, because right now they're fairly heavily monopolized within the city, and I try and use them to kind of give guidance to patrol in general. These are the times and places to have an impact on existing speeding, to make the enforcement part of traffic calming more effective. Those units cost, I think the last one I purchased a year or 2 ago was right around $2,500. And there's a few different versions. I do know that the town public works department manages several of them. I think they have close to a half dozen that public works deploys as part of their continuous surveillance of roadway use and volume.
Fair enough. So, but when it's collecting data, though, it's passive, right? I'm trying to. One of my concerns is that we're going to burden the police department with data collection as opposed to enforcement here. But you put it somewhere and you go back and get the data 2 weeks later, or as much later as you'd like.
I've got to keep the batteries up in it. The JMR no more than a week, and that's kind of weather dependent. That's in part why it's great that the window exists for these studies. Lithium batteries can't survive in freezing temperatures. They just can't. And that's what this is using. So I have to change the batteries at least weekly. Usually I visit the sites at least 2 to 3 times during a 2-week study. And I manually pull the data and run the reports at that time. So there's a little bit of maintenance, but it's not significant. It takes me about 20 minutes or so to deploy a unit when a site has been selected.
Fair enough. And it's did I understand from some of your answers here that some of the collection that we're doing is based, like I was hoping earlier, that like your professional opinion on where we need more data so that we can do better enforcement, or are there's some that's being recorded that are not based on citizen requests?
The primary examples I have that right now are Park Street and Maple Street, where those are kind of known problems to stuff that we observe through the police department. A lot of the other has been kind of the ability to get up to speed with citizen generated complaints.
Fair enough. And so it wouldn't be one of the things that I noted as we were talking about the new policy was we didn't talk about testing before and after any traffic calming was implemented, especially these pilot projects that Chris was suggesting. Would it be a burden on you we decided to place one of those to test before and after?
and one of the biggest limitations is equipment. There's a comment in the memo that my recommendation was a limit of about 5 per year. That's with the understanding that I'm essentially the only one at the police department who handles the equipment, and that is a summer capacity of at least one of the devices being deployed continuously, which means no interruptions from vacation, days off, mechanical breakdowns, or any other situation that would prevent the use of that equipment. So without additional equipment, doubling the use of data collection and the fact that you're collecting it before and after is a notable labor increase for sure.
Fair enough.
Can't be done? Yes, but there's limitations to the overall volume.
Fair enough. And did I understand you to say that in the town that some of this data collection is done by town public works as opposed to EPD?
Correct.
So there's an opportunity here with some training that other people could take this burden off of you personally.
Sorry, Rick. Yes.
I think you're all gonna get
Fair enough. Great. Thank you very much, and thank you again for that ride along where you taught me a lot. I appreciate it.
Elaine, do you have any questions?
Do have one more question, sort of set of questions. When you decide to place one of those radars to start collecting data, can you talk about where you put the radar? The reason I'm asking, and this is a little bit personal because it's on Dunbar Drive, which is the speed study I requested.
Mm-hmm.
I live at the base of the hill on Dunbar where people come down that hill and they're going very fast. But the radar was placed much further down the street within 2 or 3 houses of the stop sign and the T. So a lot of slowing will have happened between the bottom of the hill and where the radar was placed. And I'm curious if it were placed closer to the base of the hill, whether the speed readings would be different. So I just am curious about how you decide where to put the device.
So a lot of that is limitations of the roadway and the manufacturer. So they cannot be in areas where there's regularly parked cars or snowbanks. I have to mount them on, historically, I only had equipment to mount them on like utility poles and lamp poles, which there's not a lot of in your neighborhood.
No.
You have buried utilities. And I have to have it on a straight piece of roadway because the unit has to get measured out, and it's deployed at a very specific angle across the roadway to capture a segment of the roadway. And through the approach and departure and that measurement area, it has to be straight or the math in the box doesn't work. So there are some limitations on where that stuff can physically be deployed. And even when we're doing speed enforcement, there's limitations on, to some degree, on where and how we can measure the speed of a suspected offending motorist that come with constraints from the manufacturer of the equipment we're using. Because it's all measuring triangles. And if we're too far off the angle, the math doesn't math.
I guess physics is a limiting factor.
Yes.
That's too bad because I had a close call today. So that hill is really dangerous, but I get it.
Yeah, so I mean, I try and pick the best place that meets all those goals, and I use a lot of my personal experience from doing a lot of speed enforcement to understand where the speed may be occurring and where those hazards exist from existing crash data. One of the things that was discussed in the development of this policy is having some more communication with city's engineer on where these data points are being collected and where they may be more beneficial. So we can collaborate on that in between the limitations of the equipment and the most beneficial location of the data. We can find the best spot to collect that data to get the best picture of what's happening on that roadway.
Thank you. Oh,
I wanted to say, I'm gonna relieve Rick a little bit, or make the offer of the city engineer.
Sorry to interrupt. Is Jeff, is that you talking? Can you come to a mic? Because we're having a hard time hearing you online.
I just wanted to make the offer with, if the city wants to, that is something that I would be happy, our firm would be happy to work with the police department on setting these units up, getting trained on them, or just plain assisting with it. To date, usually what happens is a speed study comes up, and what happens is Essex Police goes and does it. And then a few weeks later, we get the data. And we oftentimes don't collaborate right now on where it goes or what's the point. Why are we doing it? Is it because of speeding? Is it because of we had a close call with a child? What is the issue here going on? That may impact the data, where we collect it and how we collect it. So I just make that offer to the city, that I would be happy to work more with these guys. And if there were more units, to get trained on them and set them up.
I don't think there's anyone happier to hear that than Rick Jones.
I'm sure Rick loves it. But basically that data, whoever collects it usually ends up coming across us anyways. So it makes sense to get us involved one step earlier. So I just make that offer if necessary.
Appreciate it. Is there any other questions?
Relevant question then?
No, because you said you were done.
Oh, all right. I'll take it offline.
I was kidding. Go ahead.
Fine. I wanted to just understand the other municipality that you serve and how their system works, because the police department aren't involved with it. So do they send you data from if it reaches, or how do you know? I'm just trying to understand, like we're saying, okay, you're handling it. They're saying, okay, their engineer is handling it.
Right.
But
the answer to that is that they are involved and they're not involved. So it depends really on, and there is no policy. There's never been a policy for the town. So if a citizen makes a complaint about speeding, say they call the town office, that will get forwarded to the police department. It's just, that's the repository for that.
Okay.
However, the town on its own, the public works, they're doing their own studies at all different kinds of times for various reasons. I think you told me they were doing one in, was it down here off of River Road, I think recently, right? Yeah, in Pinewood. For what purpose, I don't know, but I'm sure they've got their reason. So, but if one comes to the police department, then Corporal Gragg goes out and he does the same thing that he's doing for the city, which is he assesses whether it needs a study of its own, and then he puts the box out there for our purposes to determine when enforcement is the most appropriate.
Okay.
So in the town, the way they handle it is the select board has to order a traffic study to be done. So somebody has to formally come in front of the select board, make a proposal about having a speed study done on their street. And then it goes from there.
And then even if they do their own, you're going to do your own.
We are going to do one, but the town is going to handle that. Those ones that the select board orders, usually it's the town highway department, because they have their own engineers and stuff that go ahead and do that. So.
Okay, thanks. It was just, I just wanted to understand it a little better.
I just want to be clear, and if I can make a comment on what y'all are discussing is, I'm really happy to see this policy being discussed, because having a process for us to be clear when someone calls us and says, I want speed bumps on my road. Right now we're referring it, well, you need to talk to the city office, and they don't, then they're calling us again saying, hey, I didn't get speed bumps on my road. What am I supposed to do? So this process is really going to be effective in that, and Jeff said it, is to collaborate amongst public works, the engineers, the police department, and everybody in Chris's office as well, in order to solve a problem in a certain place. That to me is going to be excellent. And I will be fully upfront saying that if the city passes this and goes with it, I will be bringing it to the town soon. So
thanks, Chief. I appreciate that. I just wanted to understand the process a little bit, not right, wrong, or indifferent.
Yep.
If we're asking for resources from you, I want to make sure that.
Absolutely.
Regina and Chris, do you have what you need from us, or do you need us to go through the questions individually?
I mean, well, let's bring up the list of questions just so I can take a look at what those were again.
Yep.
I mean, I think overall, we got some good feedback so far. We can definitely make those tweaks. If this is the direction that makes sense, which I'm not seeing or feeling that this is a wrong direction from you all, but if anyone feels that way, now would be an excellent time to let us know.
I'll speak for myself. I think the direction it's heading in is fine. I think that, you know, a neighborhood petition system be replaced. I think as long as there's no, you know, one person, as Elaine says, gets a speed bump because they complained. And then again, it's, does the traffic calming measure make sense for the roadway, right? And I would very much encourage Public Works to sign off on it, the fire chief, the director of Essex Rescue, your folks, all of those emergency services. Speak from my experience, there is nothing worse than hitting a speed bump in a 74,000-pound truck a little too quick. It's jarring, and it takes a while to get that thing going again once you've slowed down to 5 miles an hour to go over it. So.
Okay.
So I think in some capacity, Regina, I think we've hit all of these, but if
I may, Amber, I'd like to hear from the Bike Walk Committee. Is this kind of, this feels to be more of a deliberative process being added to their responsibilities, and I want to make sure that that's something they want to do, even though it feels like it's the right home for them. And I'd want us to talk at some point, doesn't have to be today, about the question regarding additional funds for traffic calming.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. And I think now that we have a better handle that this is where you want to go, I think we can think about that a little bit more as we're putting together the budget. Both in terms of this concept, which is a good one, that if we are thinking about pilot projects, it really does make sense that we have before and after data collection. So the understanding the extra capacity needed for that. As well as, you know, some pot of money that we can actually use to do some of this work. You know, I think what it feels like as kind of an intro step is that there's some amount of money that's in the general fund to do some of the pilot type projects. But if there's something that gets to a real high dollar amount, like some of those permanent improvements in Burlington, my inclination is that those still get fed through the capital planning process. But you know, those are some of the details that we can kind of work out now that we're fairly clear that what we've generally proposed here makes sense. Okay.
And Regina, Michael is here and he staffs the Bike Walk Advisory Committee. If it would be useful to you know, hear about capacity and
Give you room.
Everybody's leaving.
Yeah, it was a great question. Michael Jaguar, city planner, for those who I haven't met. We did bring this up months ago when Aaliyah brought the first draft of this policy, and we circulated it to Bike Walk Advisory Committee, having obvious impacts to pedestrian and cyclist life in Essex Junction. John O'Brien, chair of that committee, is also behind me here today, can chime in. I got resounding support from the committee members. They were not only excited for the opportunity to have more input on infrastructure, but felt like you know, our peer municipalities, South Burlington in particular, use their equivalent committee as that public platform, so that we get, when this gets brought to, say, your level at the city council, or to, you know, Jeff and Chris and I, when we're working on design, that we have that community context. We already have that input of like, well, what is life actually like on this street? So they seem to eager at the opportunity.
Great, thank you both.
Appreciate that insight.
Yeah.
Are we good, Gina? Okay. Council?
You good?
Yeah.
We're good in the room.
Okay.
Add that I very much appreciate all the team members here on this. It's a big topic, and really appreciate Corporal Greg pulling this stuff together last week, because I also saw him at National Night Out, and I also saw him at the Mumford and Sons concert, which was very exciting. And while I'm talking about it,
busy, in case you didn't know.
yeah,
He's getting ready for the 10 best days of summer too. We're gonna see him all day, every day.
yeah. But overall, before you guys leave, really appreciate EPD's efforts with that concert. It was very exciting and a lot going on there, moving a lot of people through the city, and really appreciate that.
Yep.
It was seamless. It was great.
Yeah.
We haven't had a 10,000 concert in about 10 years.
Yeah.
It was very enjoyable from my backyard.
Metallica is next.
No.
Again.
That was also a great concert.
I will reiterate that as well. Thank you for all of your work on this. Thanks, Ricky. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Chris, Regina, Leah. Anybody who I'm forgetting, sorry, it's because it's 8:30 at night and I get up at 3:30 in the morning, so I'm a little tired. But thank you all and hope you have a good rest of your evening. It did rain, so it's a little bit cooler out, so that should help. I'm gonna move on to business item 6D, which is discussion and consideration of the Crescent Connector Corrective Action Plan Ordinance. And Regina, I'll hand this back to you, I guess. Though we've already seen this, so I don't know if any counselors have any questions, comments, concerns on this agenda item.
Nothing in the room.
Brian?
We asked for some feedback from legal on the wording of how to make sure that the community development director could enforce this, not just city manager.
To the ordinance, and so that works fine from where we are now. We also, as a reminder, we're talking about that both with chapter 9 and chapter 18, and we took a look and felt like where we are at now works fine for all of those. It is a good reminder that at some point we need a thorough review of all of the ordinances to get the language more not streamlined. Uniform. Thank you. From one to the other.
Great, thank you.
All right, so I'm trying to get there in my packet. Is there a motion? Thank you.
82.
Anybody wants to do that?
I'll move that the city council adopt the new proposed Essex Junction Municipal Ordinance, Chapter 22, Ordinance regulating earthwork within the Crescent Connector right-of-way, as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you, folks. Okay, so the last two items are executive sessions, so I will entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, councilor member comments and city manager report. City manager.
Paving wrapping up this week, hopefully. We could have done better about notification as we got closer to the paving the big streets. So apologies for that. We will do better on that in the future. But the striping still has to happen on Pearl Street. There's the potential that that will happen on Friday, but there's a lot of different projects that this subconsultant is working on. So that is the status there.
Regina?
Yes.
Can I say them?
Please do. You have to come to the
I did ask
microphone.
for an update on.
Come to
I did
the-
ask for an update striping. And what I was told, he is going to contact the striping company, because it's a subcontractor, and give me an update on that. It may not happen Friday now, because they got pushed off today because of weather. With all the rain that's impacted, and that schedule, this is part of what's going on here, is it's not just Essex Junction. These guys are paving in other municipalities and other places. And so when one gets bumped, that snowballs down the line, and impacts schedules everywhere. So what I am told is that by no means will they miss their end date of the 21st. They will be done before the fair, is what I was told. So if it doesn't happen Friday, I'm expecting that it'll happen either Monday or perhaps even over the weekend. I mean, these guys, their schedules are constant. May happen at night, may happen during the day. We're not sure on that yet. Depends where they go. So I will keep you updated as I know it. So
We'll just send Tim out with some spray paint if it doesn't happen, but it's all good. Thank you, though. We got a backup plan.
That sounds fun, Tim. I'm in.
Brian.
Go ahead, Regina.
Well, it helps us watch.
Yeah. So
Regina, do not let that happen, Regina.
I have been shaking my head.
No.
The new traffic calming
you,
policy is
Ricky.
a wavy yellow line.
Okay.
Remember when they
So
did that stick-on striping?
Yeah.
Ricky, you probably remember when we had stick-on striping for a while there?
Yep.
And like after a season, it went like
Yep.
this, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So we are at the moment planning to move the 2 Lincoln team back over into the office spaces. The elevator itself is not scheduled for final inspection until tomorrow morning. So we're feeling confident that we are moving forward here. And there are lots of sort of loose ends and pieces that still need to be worked out. So everything is not absolutely 100% set, but our plan is to close the city offices Monday at noon, reopen Thursday morning. So we got notice about that out today, and our plan will be to do an open house of some kind closer towards the end of September, when things are fully wrapped up. And so that's my big news.
Very exciting.
Cool. We're excited. Anybody else?
Just want to say thank you again about the Mumford and Sons concert. It went so smoothly. Just watching from the sidelines, just the police, traffic control, the CDE employees. It went very well. Everybody seemed very happy. So, except for Noah Khan, who tried to take a shower and was afraid of being seen by everybody at the concert.
Put up an Instagram video from inside the
Yes,
shower stall.
he did. It was a great video. I felt bad for him, but it was funny. But anyway, it was just a really smooth show, and just kudos to everybody for pulling it off.
Yep. Thanks, Elaine. All right. Who's got the executive session motions and they want to read these tonight? Don't everybody jump at it. Thanks, Elaine.
Hey, Marcus isn't here, and he usually jumps right in.
Yeah, I have.
I move that the city council make the specific finding that premature disclosure of the contractual matters would place the city at a substantial disadvantage. I also move that the city council enter into executive session to discuss a contract pursuant to 1 VSA 313A1A to include the city council and city manager.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Was it just the one or? Yeah.
How about, I move that the city council enter into executive session to discuss a contract pursuant to 1 VSA 313A to include the city manager, city council and city manager. They're the same
It's the
motion.
same
Okay.
motion.
Oh, here's motion one is I move that the city council make this, the specific finding of breach. Yeah, so we're good.
I just did both of those.
Okay, great.
Okay.
We're good.
All right. We're good then.
You're wondering who should have voted twice.
Oh.
Not that, there are two separate memos. Have we read two separate memos?
Yeah, right.
Oh, the first one is about negotiating a lease, and the
With
second
Chip.
one is about contracts. And so
We did both?
the first,
Yep.
yes,
Okay.
they're the same.
They're the same. Yeah,
We're good then.
Okay.
we'll get there.
All right. So we are going into executive session. We are not coming back
Wonderful.
out of executive session. We're coming back, but we're just not coming out of executive session and voting on anything. So